You call that class warfare. I just think it's common sense fairness for the middle class.
That's it for our time. Thank you for being here and talking to our viewers this morning.
Thank you.
House of Representatives is just coming in session for the day. They're working on legislative branch appropriations. Live coverage begins. Thanks for being with us and have a good weekend.
Let us pray. Compassionate and merciful God, we give you thanks for giving us another day. As this House comes together at the end of a long week, bless the work of its members. Give them strength, fortitude, and patience. Fill their hearts with charity, their minds with understanding, their wills with courage to do the right thing for all of America. The work they have is difficult work. May they rise together to accomplish what is best for our great nation and indeed for all the world, for you have blessed us with many graces and given us the responsibility of being a light shining on a hill. May all that is done this day be for your greater honor and glory. Amen.
The Chair has examined the journal of the last day's proceedings and announces to the House his approval thereof, and pursuant to Clause 1 of Rule 1, the journal stands approved. Pledge of Allegiance will be led by the gentleman from Pennsylvania today, Mr. Fitzpatrick.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The Chair will entertain up to 5 one-minute requests on each side of the aisle. For what purpose does the gentleman from Kansas rise? Without objection to order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. President Obama has systematically and recklessly attacked the general aviation industry. It's one of America's last remaining great manufacturing industries, employing over 1.2 million people and adding $150 billion of economic activity each year. He's demonized its users and drawn a line in the sand for higher taxes. And who's President Obama hurting? Bill Gates? Warren Buffett? No, he's hurting line workers in Wichita, Kansas, and all over the country. He's hurting small business owners trying to get from Topeka to Des Moines to close a business deal. These attacks on our industry are only a diversion, a distraction from the failed economic policies of this administration. His policies have left us with a $1.6 trillion deficit this year alone and a loss of over 2 million jobs during his time in office. Mr. Speaker, the aviation industry is not asking for a bailout like you gave the auto guys. Just leave us alone. Get out of the way. We have a community that just wants to create jobs and grow our economy. That may not be your agenda, Mr. President, but it is certainly mine. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back.
The gentleman's time has expired. For what purposes does the gentleman from Ohio rise?
Madam Speaker, good morning. I request permission to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
The latest attack on elderly beneficiaries of Social Security is a scheme by which seniors' cost of living benefits would be cut through something called a chained consumer price index. The CPI, chained, involves a formula which recalculates the cost of living. The theory behind the chained CPI is that as the cost of living goes up, consumers, in this case seniors, buy cheaper products. For example, if poor seniors cannot afford to buy and eat steak, but can only afford to buy and eat cheaper cat food, their cost of living benefit would be chained to the cost of the cat food because it's cheaper than steak, and as a result, seniors will see their cost of living benefit reduced to the cheaper product and get a smaller Social Security check. The chained CPI sets up seniors for a reduced standard of living. If you must afford less, you get less Social Security benefits. The chained CPI, chaining seniors to poverty. Time to break those chains.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania rise?
Permission to address the House for 1 minute.
The gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I have the high honor and solemn task of rising to commemorate the life and service of Master Sergeant Kenneth Elwell, who was killed in action in Afghanistan this past Sunday. Sergeant Elwell, who enlisted in the Army shortly after his graduation from Council Rock North High School, was killed along with a fellow infantryman by an IED during a routine foot patrol in Kandahar on the morning of July 17th. He leaves behind a wife, Kristen, and 2 children, Elise and Nicholas, a mother, Janice, of Holland, Bucks County, Pennsylvania, and countless other family, friends, and lives that he touched. While those close to Sergeant Elwell have lost a husband, father, brother, and friend, America, too, has lost a hero. He served our nation because he loved our nation. His sister summed up his services perfectly when she said, "He did what he loved so we could do the simple, everyday things that we take for granted." And although the grief of the family must be overwhelming, I hope that they're able to take a measure of solace in the gratitude of the nation that Kenneth died defending. Tonight, his community will honor and remember him, but it is the duty of all of us here in Congress and across our grateful nation to never forget his ultimate sacrifice and the family that he leaves behind. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose is the gentleman from Rhode Island rise?
I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
The gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to honor and recognize the rich history of Liberia as we mark Liberian Independence Day on July 26th. We honor the people of Liberia and those individuals of proud Liberian descent who are celebrating 164 years of independence. Today we celebrate a great country, its people, their traditions, and the mark they have made on cities like Providence, Rhode Island, and others, making them great places to live, work, and raise families. Rhode Island's flourishing Liberian community has played an important role in making the state what it is today, and I would like to thank them for their great contributions. I'm proud to honor your heritage and the difference you have made in our state and in this country. Recently, along with my colleagues here in the Congress, I had the opportunity to welcome the President of the Republic of Liberia, Her Excellency Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, to Washington, and confirmed our support for Liberian peace efforts. May we continue to be inspired to support the people of Liberia through their democratic transition as we celebrate Liberian Independence Day. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose is the gentleman from California rise? Gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, last night I had a town hall. Obviously, I wasn't there. I had to be here, so we did it by way of Internet. And it was amazing how the consensus of those who were there was a request for those of us to take seriously our leadership responsibilities and do something about the fiscal mess we're in. In answering them, I was thinking about what the President's Bipartisan Deficit Commission leaders said about the plan we'd passed here in the House. They called it a serious, honest, straightforward approach to addressing our nation's enormous fiscal challenges. Sounds like that's the answer to the questions that were being asked last night by my constituents. Interestingly enough, there's a poll out rendering an opinion by the American people on the cut, cap, and balance bill that we passed here in the House. Over 60% of the American people happen to think it's a good idea. Perhaps we ought to stop the name-calling and look at what the American people are telling us to do and get serious, as the President's Bipartisan Deficit Commission said, come up with a serious, honest, straightforward approach to addressing our nation's enormous fiscal challenges.
For what purpose is gentleman from Minnesota rise? The gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, I'm told on a daily basis by my Republican colleagues what the American people want. I certainly respect the election certificates of my colleagues. I would ask they respect mine. I also am not sure where they find the time to travel to these other districts to hear. My colleagues and my constituents are telling me we were sent here to make democracy work, to come up with a balanced approach and make this country's fiscal responsibilities, take them seriously. The poll the gentleman just mentioned, there was a CBS poll out yesterday. 2/3 of the American public want a balanced approach. That means a combination of cuts to revenues to balance our fiscal crisis. With that being said, we have a large number of members who take pledges, pledges to not raise taxes, pledges to not ask oil companies to pay 1 penny more. The only pledge a member of this House should ever make is when they raise their hands to serve the Constitution in this country. I'm also told many times in this House what the intent of our Founding Fathers was. Now, while that's open for debate, there's one thing I'm certainly positive about. When our founders gathered together, they created a government, not a Wall Street bank. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Oregon rise?
First House for 1 minute.
Gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
In December, the President caved to the Republicans and extended all the Bush tax cuts, immediately increasing this year's deficit by $400 billion and the 10-year deficit by $4 trillion, precipitating the great debt and deficit crisis. Now, we're hearing from the press today that the President is preparing yet another great cave. Instead of saying, we will have some revenues to solve this problem, he is apparently about to cut a deal that'll be all cuts. So that's ironic. He cuts taxes to create a crisis, and then we cut spending to protect the tax cuts, because tax cuts create jobs, except they haven't created jobs, but we've got to continue to protect them. It's all very, very sad. If we get rid of all the Bush tax cuts, $4 trillion. No cuts in Social Security, no cuts in Medicare, no cuts in veterans benefits, and $4 trillion less deficit. Now that would be an equitable solution.
What purpose does the gentleman from Connecticut rise? Gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. In the 5 years leading up to the economic collapse in 2008, 67% of the new wealth that was created in this nation accumulated in the hands of the richest 1%. They now control about 2/5 of all of the money in this nation. But our Republican friends block them out of their line of sight when they look to see who can pay for our mounting deficit. They see only Social Security recipients and Medicare recipients, the disabled and the hungry. It was bad enough that we were crazy enough as a nation to fight $2 trillion wars while cutting taxes for the wealthy at the same time. Now Republicans are asking only the most vulnerable to help pay for it, and threatening to collapse the world economy by defaulting on American debt at the same time. I won't stand for it, Madam Speaker, and my constituents won't either. Social Security and Medicare recipients didn't get us into two mismanaged wars. They didn't get the benefit of the Bush tax cuts, and they shouldn't have to pay for it. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida rise?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material in further consideration of H.R. 2551, and that I may include tabular materials at the same.
Without objection, so ordered. Pursuant to House Resolution 359 and Rule 18, the Chair declares the House in the Committee of the Whole House of the State on the State of the Union for the further consideration of H.R. 2551. Will the gentlewoman from Illinois, Ms. Biggert, kindly take the chair?
The House is in the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union for the further consideration of H.R. 2551, which the clerk will report by title.
A bill making appropriations for the legislative branch for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2012, and for other purposes.
When the Committee of the Whole rose on Thursday, July 21, 2011, Amendment Number 11, printed in the House Report 1112-173, offered by the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Flake, had been disposed of. Pursuant to the order of the House of Thursday, July 21, 2011, it is now in order to consider Amendment Number 12, printed in the House Report 111-173. Printed in the House Report 112-173. Does the gentleman from New Jersey seek to recognition at this time?
I do, Madam Chair. I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment Number 12, printed in House Report Number 112-173, offered by Mr. Holt of New Jersey.
Pursuant to House Resolution 359, the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Holt, and a member opposed, each will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from New Jersey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For 23 years, Congress had the benefit of a really excellent organization, the Office of Technology Assessment. The OTA helped Congress look at the policy implications of new technologies. Then, 16 years ago, OTA was defunded. When Congress turned out the lights, they argued that other organizations would provide what OTA did: think tanks, academies, universities. We now have 16 years of evidence that we have not gotten from these other sources what we got from OTA. We need OTA now more than ever, and my amendment would shift a mere $2.5 million into OTA to breathe life back into this important agency that had a great record of improving congressional decision-making, preventing tax dollar waste, and generally improving the debate on many policy issues. OTA is still on the books. It was simply defunded, and with this amendment can be funded again. The money comes from a well-funded, little-used trust fund for Capitol building revitalization. The OTA produced thorough, balanced, nonpartisan studies on a huge variety of policy-relevant subjects. Listen to some of the reports, all produced by OTA in the years before it was defunded 16 years ago. Adverse reaction to vaccines, retiring old cars to save gasoline and reduce emissions, environmental impact of bioenergy crop production, testing in schools, treatment of Alzheimer's disease. Think about it. These studies, a few of the many, on issues of great concern to us today were written before 1995. The OTA was the best tool Congress has had to deal with our inability to look forward, to recognize and comprehend trends, to find perspective in problem solving. In other words, our congressional attention deficit disorder. 16 years ago, Congress hoped to save money by cutting OTA, and in the process, we lost one of our best opportunities to save money by avoiding costly mistakes. It is documented that OTA saved taxpayers several $100 million by understanding the best IT system for use by the Social Security Administration. Millions of dollars of savings through better Agent Orange programs. Billions of dollars by avoiding a poorly constructed Synfuels Corporation. Now, not every OTA project found favor with everyone. Some in Congress did not like to hear OTA call into question some of the extravagant claims of the missile defense contractors. The history shows OTA was right, and the missile defense folks at the Pentagon have spent a decade working around the problems uncovered. Some in Congress complained that OTA reports did not have the quick turnaround of, say, CRS. But that is just the point. OTA is the antidote to the myopia that comes from our very short attention cycle. OTA never advocated policy solutions. It didn't play politics. These are our jobs, but we need help. OTA was of Congress and for Congress. They knew our language and our decision-making framework. That's why other organizations never really filled the void created by the defunding of OTA. If we had a functioning OTA in recent years, I think there's little doubt that we could have been more aware of and better prepared to deal with looming shortages of vaccines, to incorporate new designs for flood control levees, to extend high-quality medical care to rural regions, to employ effective techniques for oil spill cleanup, or to reduce the risks of cell phone hacking, to name just a few issues of current interest. The Office of Technology Assistant is not, never was, a panacea. However, it is the best institutional tool we have had to recognize the policy implications of technology trends, to digest arguments involving technology, to expose some of our own blind spots. In other words, to illuminate and inform our legislating. We in Congress have not distinguished ourselves in recognizing and comprehending trends of implications of technology. Now, most of our colleagues here in this body do not know OTA ever existed. Most members do not miss it. This shows, I think, just how badly we need it. Always, the first step in dealing with a shortcoming is acknowledging that we have it. We badly need OTA, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves the balance of his time. For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida rise?
Madam Chairman, to claim time in opposition.
Is the gentleman opposed to the amendment?
Yes.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Madam Chairman, I yield myself such time as I may consume, and I appreciate very much the gentleman from New Jersey's passion for this program. He mentioned that they turned out the lights in 1996, some 15 years ago. And I can't help but wonder why the lights haven't been turned on in the last 15 years. And I talked to the gentleman yesterday, and I didn't know much about the OTA, but I couldn't help but wonder why in the midst of the financial mess that we find our country in, that he would pick this time to try to resuscitate a program that has lay sleeping for 15 years. I don't know whether he's tried every year to resuscitate this program and nobody was listening. I hope he's tried before. There were probably times when money was more plentiful and he might have had a better chance of bringing back a new program, a little more government. But I think this is just bad timing. I told him if he wants to continue to try to educate the members and tell them what a wonderful program this was up until 1996, there may be someday that it would be resuscitated. But the members should know that in 2008 we gave $2.5 million to the General Accountability Office to kind of do these kind of technological assessments. And they've been doing that for the last 4 years. Yes, I'll be glad to yield.
In answer to your two questions, the first is, as I said, the fact that this body doesn't know that it lacks OTA is the strongest argument of how badly we need it.
Well, reclaiming my time,
and the second point, if the gentleman would continue to yield.
If this was simply a question of education, I hope the gentleman has been working diligently for the past few years, as hard as he worked for the last 24 hours, to make people aware and to crank this thing back up. But again, this is the wrong time to try to start a new government program.
If the gentleman would yield further.
I'd be glad to yield.
As for the funding, I mean, there is an offset from a little-used fund, a trust fund for building revitalization that is unlikely to be spent in the coming year.
We're taking a mere that's an interesting question, too.
$2.5 million to save.
Reclaim my time. I appreciate that question. And that $30 million is there to use to make sure that we protect the health and safety of people in our buildings here. So I understand it won't cost any more money, but it's just a brand new federal program that I think is not a good time to be trying to do that. Again, if you've been trying to do that for the last 15 years and nobody's been listening, then it must not be all that great a program. But once again, I appreciate you being a champion of that, and maybe someday it will come back to life. With that, I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized.
I will yield such time as he may consume to the ranking member of the subcommittee.
The gentleman from California is recognized for 30 seconds.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And to answer the question about whether it's a new program, it hasn't been. It's been defunded back in '96. Since 2008 through GAO, we have been trying to fund it through there, and it's, and build it up since then. But it's still, a lot of folks didn't understand that this body really does need the kind of technological development in public and private sector and harness outside experiences in the form of advisory panels and peer review, something that GAO and CRS cannot do, and we could do through this program.
Gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Is his time expired?
The gentleman from New Jersey's time has expired.
Well, I would just simply say, as I urge my colleagues to vote no on this, again, I thank him for bringing it to our attention. It seems strange it hadn't been funded for the last 15 years. I think this is not the year to crank it back up, resuscitate it. I think we got plenty of bipartisan research that's available to the members, and maybe there's some private nonprofit corporations, big foundations that might want to do this on a voluntary basis. But again, I urge a negative vote, and I yield back my time.
Gentleman yields back. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from New Jersey. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chairs, the ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to.
Madam Chairman, I ask for a recorded vote.
Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from New Jersey will be postponed. For what purpose does the gentleman from Washington rise?
I move to strike the requisite number of words.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
And I yield to the gentleman from Vermont, Mr. Welch.
The gentleman from Vermont is recognized for... is recognized.
Okay. I thank the gentleman. Madam Speaker, I want to speak about an amendment Mr. Moran is about to offer. This is about the use of styrofoam in our cafeterias. You may remember that in 2007, then-Speaker Nancy Pelosi established the Greening of the Capitol program, and the goal was to make the U.S. House of Representatives a national leader in resource stewardship and sustainable business practices. And we made significant progress. And one of the places where we made progress was we replaced the styrofoam in the cafeteria and used recyclable dishware. We're now back to styrofoam. McDonald's doesn't use styrofoam. Years ago, McDonald's and other fast food restaurants replaced styrofoam with recyclable paperboard containers. There's no reason we can't do that. There's no reason we shouldn't do it. Polystyrene is practically unrecyclable. Most polystyrene containers end up in landfills and incinerators. There are cancer-causing chemicals that are used during its manufacture. In 1986, the EPA report on solid waste named polystyrene manufacturing the 5th largest creator of hazardous waste. We should adopt the Moran Amendment and do it the right way. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back.
I yield back the balance of our time.
The gentleman from Washington yields back the balance of the time. Who claims time? Okay. For what purposes the gentleman from Virginia rise?
Madam Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will report the title. Designate the amendment.
Amendment number 9, printed in House Report number 112-173, offered by Mr. Moran of Virginia.
Pursuant to House Resolution 359, the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Moran, and a member opposed, each will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Virginia.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. Madam Chairman, at the beginning of the year, the House did away with the composting program that had been part of the Green the Capitol initiative. It had been a success. People around the country were watching it and in fact, following the example that we set. But at the beginning of the year, as I say, the House of Representatives instituted the use of polystyrene containers. My amendment would limit the use of funds made available by this legislative branch appropriations bill to obtain polystyrene products in our food service facilities. We should show our commitment to the health of our visitors and our employees and to the future of our environment. We should lead by example. That's the program that we had in place until this January. The House should be using recyclable and biodegradable products and should be avoiding polystyrene foam packaging. We should be a model institution for others to follow. As the gentleman from Vermont said, over 20 years ago, McDonald's and other fast food restaurants replaced polystyrene foam with recyclable and paperboard containers. Making that our standard is the least we can do. The House of Representatives are the only members of the Capitol complex to revert back to foam packaging. Neither the Senate, the Library of Congress, nor the Capitol Visitor Center food service centers use polystyrene products. Congress should be setting the standard for sustainability in the 21st century. We should be leading by example. And my amendment provides a way through which we can show that leadership to the thousands of constituents who visit our offices each year. Polystyrene is practically unrecyclable. Most polystyrene containers end up in landfills or incinerators. And problems with polystyrene include cancerous chemicals that are used during its manufacture, minimal recyclability, enormous bulk during disposal, and toxic byproducts that are released during incineration. A 1986 EPA report on solid waste named the polystyrene manufacturing process the 5th largest creator of hazardous waste. And toxic chemicals leak out of these containers into the foods and drink they contain, and they endanger the human health and the reproductive systems of the people who visit the Capitol and who work in the Capitol. 105 members have sent a letter to House leadership asking that they eliminate polystyrene from House food service operations. My amendment would do just that. by limiting the funds made available in this Act from being used to obtain polystyrene containers. I will reserve the balance of my time, Madam Chairman.
Reserves the balance of his time. The gentleman from Florida is recognized.
I claim time in opposition.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Madam Chairman, I yield myself 1 minute simply to give you 3 good reasons why we should defeat this amendment. Number one, it really doesn't do anything because we don't spend any money in this bill for house restaurant services. They are funded through a revolving trust fund, and that money comes from another source. So it wouldn't have any impact in the first place. Number two, if it did have any impact, all it would do is raise the cost of everything in the restaurants and be passed on to the folks, and that's not a great thing, to spend more money. And number three, good reason, the gentleman mentioned that this year there was a bipartisan letter from the chairman of the House Administration Bill Committee, along with the ranking member, to say we've tried this program, we're going to end it. So for those 3 reasons, I think it would be appropriate to vote no. I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves the balance of his time. The gentleman from Virginia.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The argument that the gentleman makes...
The gentleman is recognized.
Pardon me?
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. The argument that the gentleman makes, first of all, seems to me we should set ourselves on record, and the Appropriations Bill is the ultimate source of funding for the Capitol complex. But the argument that this will save money, it seems to me, is deficient when we're talking about human health. I mean, we could choose not to spend money on purifying our water. We'd save a lot of money. Just let people drink out of the tap or get their water wherever. But we feel that the health of our employees and our constituents who visit us is important enough that we should invest that money. Science is telling us that, in fact, toxics leak from this material into the food and the drink that our employees and our constituents are using. Now, that science may not be as prominent, we may not be as fully aware of that, but we know that polystyrene is a toxic material. It seems to me we should err on the side of caution, particularly when the health of our employees and our constituents are concerned. So I'll continue to reserve what time is remaining.
The gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Madam Chairman, I'd like to yield 3 minutes to the chairman of the House Administration Committee, the author of the letter that ended the program in January, Mr. Lundgren from California.
The gentleman from California is recognized.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. Let me just reiterate, this came to my attention as chairman of House Administration when we received a letter from the Democratic side of the aisle as part of the transition team recommending that we discontinue this part of the Greening the Initiative process, Greening the Capitol process. That is, this one did not work. It was the Democrats that told us we ought to get rid of it. So once I heard that, I also heard of the complaints from both Democratic and Republican members of the House and their staff that the recyclable utensils we had didn't work. Didn't work. They asked for something that did work. So we canceled the program. This idea about styrofoam being a real health hazard. Linda Birnbaum, who is the toxicologist who heads the government agency that declared styrene a likely cancer risk, said this: "Let me put your mind at ease right away about styrofoam. In finished products, styrene is not an issue." The gentleman has said, and the other gentleman from Vermont said, that we ought to follow McDonald's. They no longer have this product. Well, yesterday my staff went out and got this product from McDonald's, which is styrofoam. Got this product from McDonald's, which is styrofoam. I got this product from McDonald's, which is styrofoam. So I don't know where they get this information. Lastly, they should understand that polystyrene is approved as safe for use in food service by the FDA. Anything that contains food product that comes into contact with individuals must be approved by the FDA. This is approved by the FDA. Also, this week, we are receiving bids back
for our request for proposal on trying to get a waste-to-energy recycling program to get rid of the waste that we have here on the Hill. This is to turn it into energy by way of heat energy and capture any of the offensive byproducts that may be produced. This is what we are doing. Look, you can have good science, you can have bad science. You can have smart science, you can have dumb science. You can have science or you can have no science. Now, I'm not sure which of the latter categories this proposal falls into, but it's not science. Science suggests this is something that ought to be appropriate. There are any number of producers of polystyrene in members' districts around this country. There are 2,100 users of it. This amounts to billions of dollars and thousands of jobs, tens of thousands of jobs, 8,000 just in California alone. So once again, we are using bad science to scare people, and what's the impact? It's going to cost more money. I approved of this program because it saves $500,000 in a single year. $500,000, it will save energy, and we will have literally no residue when we move from waste to energy production. It's a win-win-win situation. And by the way, members of our staff have thanked me for doing this. They can now have utensils that actually are usable.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Virginia.
Madam Chairman, first of all, the letter that was sent did not request polystyrene products by any means. It was referring to another product that was corn-based. Certainly, Mr. Brady was not recommending styrofoam cups. But the gentleman from California would like I'll yield to him for 30 seconds.
The gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman from Florida.
Madam Chairman, I'd like to yield the remaining time to a member of the subcommittee, Mr. Calvert from California.
The gentleman from California is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Madam Chairman. Before I came here to Congress, I was in the restaurant business, and we had to please the customers that we served. We certainly couldn't give them an inferior product. Only in Washington, D.C. would we spend more and get less. The gentleman from California just referred $500,000 a year more in cost, and if you did a survey of the people who use those products, it would be dismal. I had the experience of putting a fork in a hot piece of meat one day, and it melted. That is ridiculous. We in Congress should not give inferior products to the people who work here and serve here and spend more money for it. So with that, Madam Chairman, let's just do the common sense thing here. Get a product that works and spend less money. I thank you, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. All time has expired. The question is on the amendment by the gentleman from Virginia. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. The amendment is not agreed to. The gentleman from Virginia.
Will request a recorded vote on that.
Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Virginia will be postponed. For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida rise?
Madam Chairman, I move that the committee do now rise.
The question is on the motion to rise. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee does rise.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Speaker, the Committee of the Whole House and the State of the Union had under consideration H.R. 2551 directs me to report that it has come to no resolution thereon.
The Chair and the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union reports that the committee has had under consideration H.R. 2551 and has come to no resolution thereon. The Chair will receive a message.
Mr. Speaker, a message from the Senate.
Mr. Speaker.
Madam Secretary.
I have been directed by the Senate to inform the House that the Senate has passed with amendments H.R. 1383, cited as the Restoring GI Bill Fairness Act of 2011, in which the concurrence of the House is requested.
Pursuant to Clause 12A of Rule 1, the House will stand in recess subject to the call of the Chair.
So as you heard, the House is taking a short recess as they consider legislative branch spending for the next budget year. It's about $3 billion, 6% less than last year. At least